Hey, this is Joel again with another answer to one of our frequently asked questions. A lot of owners want to know about the tenant screening process, which is a significant issue because, frankly, if there's one thing that's going to mess you up while you're owning a rental property, it's not having your tenants screened properly. It can get you in trouble with the obvious, which is putting the wrong tenant into the property, but then it can also get you in trouble because if the tenant hasn't been screened properly, it can become much more difficult to complete an eviction or even have a damages lawsuit. So we recognize how important that screening process is, and in fact, we've been approved by a national screening company to have access to background information that is typically not available to other property management companies. You have to go through a lot of background checks, and a lot of that came to our office and inspected the office just to be able to be sure that we got that information. Now, subsequently, it's information that we have had to promise that is private. If we started handing that information out to other people, we would lose our accreditation. But first of all, that's a big factor in your favor when you choose to use our company as your property manager and to do your leasing. Our process for screening includes employment, where we verify employment and we determine that the income that the tenant earns historically is enough to at least, at a minimum, cover rent by 3 times. We also look at their previous rental history and monitor, of course, for any previous evictions. If there's an eviction in the last 3 years, we're not going to be able to approve them. And typically we'd like for it to be much longer than that, or no evictions at all, preferably. But we also talk to the landlord and make sure they make their rent payments on time, and question if they've had any previous lease violations that we need to be aware of, such as having a pet that wasn't authorized. We find out all those things. We also search the national eviction databases to be certain that what the landlord is telling us is correct, and also to detect any previous judgments or orders against the applicant. We will also look at their credit and look at their FICO scores and how they pay their bills. Now, a lot of tenants don't have great credit, but what we really want to look at is why they don't have good credit. It's not unusual in this day and age to find tenants that have student loans and possibly they fall behind or defaulted on those student loans. That's one issue. A lot of people have problems with medical bills and have issues regarding collections. That's another issue. Both of those are things that are pretty common, and in my 25 years of experience, don't reflect upon how well they will make their rent payments. But what does concern me is when we see things like car possessions in the last few years. Even anything in a car repossession is a significant issue. Paying any kind of personal debt and defaulting on that, those are the kinds of credit issues that have more credence in really questioning whether this is somebody you want to bring into your property or not. Finally, we do look at criminal background, and we look at any issues that are on the record that a potential applicant has been found guilty of or pleaded guilty. Our information brings up lots of speeding tickets, and if speeding tickets were enough to stop renting anybody, we'd probably not have any tenants. But what we're really looking for there are issues that are violent crimes, sexual offenders, or drug trafficking or drug manufacturing or selling. Those are the primary things that are going to come up that we're going to look at in a background screening. So I hope all this gives you a little brief outline of how thorough we are. We have a background in the banking industry, and so it's always been my philosophy that for owners, it's actually better sometimes to have a vacant home than to just have anybody who can fog a mirror approved. And while we don't want your home to be vacant, we don't want to just put the wrong person in. And therefore, historically, our eviction rates have stayed in a range of less than 3% on tenants that we have placed. So hopefully that answers your question and you found this video helpful.